Paul, why do you believe a commissioning first approach is the key to fixing the challenges of traditional construction-led project development?
Commissioning is really one of the three fundamental phases of projects if you look at the highest level. So when we're planning for design or planning for construction, we need to be planning for commissioning at the same time so that all three phases of the project are planned in conjunction for a robust plan for completion.
If you're a project manager or engineer like me, you probably think that commissioning is something that's done at the end of a project to close out a project. But if you think that, believe it or not, you're wrong. Commissioning is something that should happen at the beginning and through every stage of the project to make sure that your project stays on track. And if you fail to plan for commissioning and hold it till the end, you could really put your projects over budget. And if it's a larger mega project, it could sink your project financially. In today's episode, I have with me Paul Turner. Paul's a professional engineer. He's also the CEO of the Industrial Commissioning Association, or ICA. And today, Paul's going to talk about the importance of a commissioning-first approach on your projects. And really, quite frankly, it's something that we need to get educated on as project managers because most of us do think that commissioning is at the end of our projects. So let's jump in and see what Paul has to say about a commissioning-first approach. I'm Anthony Fasano, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast. All right, now I'd like to welcome my guest onto the show for today. Paul Turner is a professional engineer. He's also a PMP and the CEO of the Industrial Commissioning Association. Paul, welcome to the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thanks. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
So, Paul, maybe you can start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of your career journey, and what inspired you to lead the Industrial Commissioning Association.
So I started my engineering journey back in 2001 in the aerospace industry. I was building satellites and rockets for the Canadian Space Agency. And through that experience, there's definitely a high level of quality required when you're building things that are going to go into space. Once you launch that rocket, they must work. So through that first part of my career, I had a lot of exposure to strict requirements, high quality requirements, and everything had to work. Following that, I moved into the power industry where projects were on the ground, obviously, big, huge mega projects, building hydroelectric generation stations and HVDC facilities, big power projects. But I didn't see the same level of quality that existed on some of my earlier projects in the aerospace industry. It seemed to me that there was lots of reliance on the reset switch that was just down the hall in the protection cubicle, or things that could be done later and pushed to the end of the project. And I could see that projects were struggling understanding this complex phase at the end known as commissioning. So this was my way of giving back and helping other people understand the complexities of commissioning and how to deliver mega projects, was starting and building the Industrial Commissioning Association with lots of helpful resources to help project managers on projects plan for success in the end.
That's great. And for our listeners, maybe not 100% familiar with commissioning, could you describe what it is for our listeners?
Absolutely. So commissioning has some misconceptions about what it's really all about. Lots of people will think that commissioning is just testing at the end of the project. And that's some of the challenges in the industry, is because that thought process and mentality is widespread in the industry. But what commissioning is really a commissioning process that spans the entire duration of a project, right from project concept stage through feed stage. There's a project management process that is the commissioning process to guide projects to success in the end. So commissioning really needs to be planned in conjunction with design activities and construction activities to have a holistic approach to project success.
So commissioning happens throughout a project, not just at the end of the project.
That's correct. Commissioning is really a project management process to structure the completion of mega projects when you're transitioning from area-based construction to systems-based completion, there's a very specific systems-based project management approach in how you structure projects for successful completion.
That's interesting. And to me, that would mean that commissioning is critical to the success of projects in the engineering world and beyond, because if you're not doing that commissioning at each stage of your project, as you suggest, as a process, then you may be moving the project forward without having that proper right finalization of one phase of a project, let's say, because it hasn't been commissioned successfully and you're just going on to the next piece.
That's right. Without that finalization and without that essential risk mitigation, if you're not implementing a commissioning process right at the beginning, then you're really leaving a lot of risk on the table that's going to pile up at the end of projects. And that's when projects can run into trouble, right? If there's issues that have been deferred till later, don't worry about it. The commissioning guys will figure that out, right? Well, then there can be expensive delays and cost overruns as these issues are discovered later rather than much earlier in the project with a thorough commissioning process.
Interesting. So, Paul, why do you believe a commissioning first approach is the key to fixing the challenges of traditional construction led project development?
Commissioning is really one of the three fundamental phases of projects. If you look at the highest level, we need some things that are designed, we need some things that are installed, and then we need them to work together at the end of the project. So when we're planning for design and we're planning for construction, we need to be planning for commissioning at the same time so that all three phases of the project are planned in conjunction for a robust plan for completion. Now, that's not often the case in the industry. Lots of projects will move forward with design and construction and have pretty good plans to get through that phase of the project. But then when you plan for commissioning, say middle of construction, those activities that took place earlier during design and construction didn't necessarily align with the plans for commissioning. And things can quickly spiral out of control when we're transitioning from construction to commissioning and nothing's working, nothing's lining up. The systems aren't in the right sequence, and it causes a lot of expensive delays at the end of projects. So a holistic approach to plan all phases of the project is really required right at the start.
So, assuming that project teams do integrate commissioning early on into the projects, as you're suggesting here, what are some of the biggest benefits of doing it early on in the planning, and how can they make it happen?
The biggest benefits are getting the details for commissioning in design and construction contracts. The more information we can provide to construction groups earlier, then that helps them do their job, right? When they know the full picture of how to plan their construction completions, then it's much easier for them to plan resources and material deliveries to align with what's needed for commissioning. It's not fair really to withhold this information and give it to groups later in the project, because then construction is a big effort. There's long lead material deliverables. There's huge workforces that need to be coordinated, and that just doesn't turn on a dime. Having this information in contracts right from the start gives all project participants the full picture in how they need to plan and execute their work and how they need to complete it to align for a smooth transition to commissioning.
Hmm, That's awesome. So, Paul, can you walk us through the ICA Global Commissioning Standard and how it helps project teams stay on track?
So the ICA Global Commissioning Standard is a set of 9 documents that were released and are available to anyone that's interested to download the standard, get a copy for yourself. You can log in as a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association, and everything's there for you to download. So the 9 documents really walk through the start to finish of a fully developed commissioning program through all stages of projects. So there's documents that define the commissioning phases and handover model, all the roles and responsibilities, the terminology, which is very important because often you hear or see people using different terminology and can get very confusing. So everybody using the same terminology is important so that we're talking about the right details, right through from commissioning strategy at the beginning of projects, offsite testing, all of the on-site testing phases that people are maybe more familiar with for commissioning, but the entire holistic process in start to finish of how you would plan for commissioning on your project. So this is super helpful set of documents for project managers. You can download this and really see the details of what commissioning is really all about.
I think that's great to create kind of a global standard for something this important so that, it is something that there's consistency across the industry on these projects when commissioning is done. And I'm hopeful that, project managers that are listening here can take advantage of the standard that's been created because I think one of the bigger pitfalls in project management that I've seen is this lack of consistency, whether it's from project to project within one organization or, industry wide. And hopefully what you've created here in terms of the standard can be really helpful to project managers.
And it's been a challenge for sure because there has been no standard. The industry has ended up somewhat disjointed, right? As everybody's had to make up their own process of how they do commissioning internally. And it makes it super challenging for people moving from one project to the other because there's no standard approach, right? And you have to reinvent the wheel every time. So that's the goal with the standard is now there's a document people can use as reference and align their contracts for standardization in terminology and process. And hopefully it helps the industry.
Yeah, it's great. And I know exactly what you're referring to because we've encountered the same issues at EMI in terms of project management consistency across the industry. There's been organizations like PMI, it's a great organization that has created a global standard for project management, but the standard is not specific to architecture, engineering, and construction. It's more general in nature. And so we've tried to do at EMI, similar to what you've done, is create a project management standard across the AEC industry and created some life cycles and some courses around it and certification. And we've started to get a lot of traction with it. I think the reason is to what you were saying before is because people want consistency. And when you have something that you can follow and be more consistent, it's good for the projects, it's good for the communities, and it's good for the industry as a whole. It's kind of like you're all talking the same language is the best way I think to describe it, essentially.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And PMI, like you said, they have some great information. If you go through their programs and get your PMP, that's a great way to start for the beginning of projects. But you're right, it does become a little bit more general in the project management approach to completing projects. So that's another reason we've created the Industrial Commissioning Association is this is the last project management portion that isn't necessarily included elsewhere, that you can get this project management approach to completing projects in your hands and get that missing information for completing any size of project.
So, Paul, what's the most common misunderstanding about commissioning that you've encountered, and how do you help teams overcome it?
The most common misconception in the industry is that commissioning is just testing at the end of projects. It's often minimized as an afterthought is when construction is getting close to completion, then we need the commissioning guys to come to site and do all of their testing. The term commissioning in itself causes a lot of confusion. When the term commissioning is used, it really is referring to the commissioning process, but it often gets confused with just testing at the end. The commissioning process is a project management process that spans the entire duration of projects. And if that's one thing I can stress to help people understand better is that commissioning really needs some detailed investigation at the beginning of projects to make sure that your on-site testing at the end is successful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled that we had you on today because I've been doing this for years and I've probably interviewed tons of people on podcasts. And my take on commissioning was always that it's an end of the project, wrap it up type of thing. But obviously, that's not the case. And for AEC professionals like myself who are kind of new to this mindset, how can they shift toward a commissioning first approach in their projects?
It's always a challenging discussion, right? Because there is misconceptions in the industry and there's always cost and resources controls. So the natural response when discussing or asking for some of this at the beginning of projects is, no, we don't need that now. We'll defer that to the end of the project, right? Thinking that we don't need a team of 50 people at the beginning of projects to do a bunch of testing. That'll come later, right? But there are some very specialized skill sets that are needed from a commissioning management level at the beginning of projects to work with construction managers and design managers and project managers to holistically plan out all phases of the project. So it's somewhat of a different skill set than you might be thinking, but the commissioning management role that exists is that key one or two individuals at the beginning of projects to help plan out successfully. So to understand what this looks like, definitely get your hands on the ICA Global Commissioning Standard, because we've made it as simple as we can, easy to read, easy to understand, and it walks through the entire project management process to help all people on projects, whether that's commissioning folks, construction folks, design, project management, project executive. The resources there to download and help understand this important phase of projects.
That's great. So you mentioned the resources that ICA has available to help professionals, which is great. What value can AEC professionals gain from joining as members?
So access to the standard is a big value there. This is really the first comprehensive global commissioning standard that's publicly available to everyone to download and access and understand this commissioning process. All 9 parts of the documents are available for download, and you can get that in the members area in the Industrial Commissioning Association. Along with that, you also get the community. So we're over 3,000 members in the members area of our platform that we've set up there. You can log in, you can chat with other professionals. Maybe there's someone working on a similar project to yours on the other side of the world, and you can get some advice or suggestions on challenges you're experiencing on your projects. Plus, everything you need to plan for commissioning is within the members area. All the document templates that you need to properly plan for commissioning, everything that's referenced in the standard, it's all within the members area. So we've essentially created a commissioning kit, if you will, that people can get access to and download everything you need to figure out this complex part of projects.
And am I right in saying that there's a free membership?
Yes, there is. Yeah, our goal is to get this information in the hands of as many people as possible. So all access to our members area is free. You can log in and get the standard for free. All the document templates are for free. Everything's there that you can take and use on your projects right away. There are options if you want additional support. There's training options and other things like that that can help you accelerate your learning a little bit more. But all the information, the standard, the document templates, the members community, everything's available to get this information in the hands of everybody as easily as possible.
That's great. And of course, we'll link to the site in the show notes and below the video, but the website is icxa.net. That's icxa.net. If you want to check it out, join for free and get this information, which is obviously critically important for project managers. So, Paul, one last question that I have for you, which we call the PM pitfalls question. From your experience as a project manager, what would you say is one of the bigger pitfalls that PMs face, and how would you recommend that they overcome it, avoid it, or kind of minimize this challenge for PMs out there?
The biggest PM pitfall is thinking that commissioning is just testing at the end. That's project managers that take this approach are pushing all that risk to the end of projects. And all project managers know that risk management is an important part of projects. So by engaging commissioning folks, your commissioning managers early in projects, that's really your best source of risk mitigation on projects to start structuring your project for a strong finish at the end during on-site testing. So avoid that pitfall and don't go down that path of thinking that commissioning is just testing at the end. Take a holistic approach to planning all phases of your project right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that that's really important to have that plan from the beginning. And one of the things that we talk about when we do our project management training courses is you have to set your project up for success from the beginning, which usually starts with a project management plan, maybe a risk register, a solid kickoff meeting. And I think it would be really smart, based on my conversation here with Paul today, to somehow factor commissioning into your planning at the beginning of a project to avoid all of the challenges that, Paul has basically described to us here in our conversation. So once again, he's Paul Turner. He's a professional engineer, PMP, and CEO of the Industrial Commissioning Association. Paul, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thank you so much, everybody. Good luck with your projects.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Paul. It's really awesome what he's done in trying to get this information out to project managers. And I don't know about you, but I did think commissioning was something just strictly for the end of a project. And now I know that it's better to take a commissioning first approach. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe to our channel here. I put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better project managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.